Some of you may know about this already because it has been spread around social media for a while now. This video is to remind these moments and give a comprehensive perspective of how f***ed this curse is. When you stop to think about it, it really is every UFC card Paulo Costa participated in that this happens. What is this ordeal I am speaking of? The turn of a new champion. If there is a pay-per-view UFC card that has Paulo Costa fighting in it, there is a 100% chance for Bruce Buffer on that same night to say, "And no!" So let's start at the very beginning. UFC 212, Aldo lost to Max. People tend to forget that Paulo Costa was undefeated and a great rising prospect. He was also called Paulo Borrachina. He fought against Oluwale Bamboshe. The fight started off in Oluwale's favor, where he was a lot more explosive and landed the first good strike in the fight. But 1 minute later, he goes to take down Costa. A few times actually, and even an attempt for back mount. There goes his energy for a bit. Not sure why he wanted to do that, and you guessed it right. Paulo Costa knew he got tired pretty quick and released a flurry of strikes and lots of pressure against the cage. Costa was mostly aiming for the body to really get the wind out of his opponent, so he will literally be a walking TKO in the next round. And the next round begins, and that's basically what happened. Bamboshe slipped during his high kick combination and Costa went for the ground and pound. Knowing he was tired as shit already, he just didn't have the power and explosiveness to block or do anything about the ground and pound. Easy win for Costa.
Put Bamboshe on his back and then just start swinging the punches. Bamboshe was so tired, he couldn't get back up, he couldn't defend, and that was the end of the fight.
Later that night was the title featherweight fight against Aldo and Max Holloway. Aldo, only having lost to Conor McGregor in the UFC, still had a strong record of 26 wins and 2 losses at the time. He was also the slight favorite in this fight too. I made a video on this fight already, giving it a big deep dive, but I'll just condense it for this section. In enemy soil, Max packs his bags to Rio and challenges the reigning champion Jose Aldo. Max proves the haters wrong again, where he does not have pillow hands. He does get rocked first throughout the fight, where Aldo is much more set and much more accurate with his shots, which most likely surprised Max, wondering why a guy so much shorter is hitting so hard, and eats a flush knee while rocked. Yeah, that's his chin talking. No one else can tank that. And he taunts Aldo because he doesn't have a chin. I feel like Max is putting on a show because it is an undisputed championship fight right now. Max dodges a knee mid-combination and still pushes Aldo with his pressure. I have never seen someone do that. And here comes the fateful moment. Max creeps in slowly with feints just so he can be in range. Throws a jab in which Aldo goes in for the check hook, but it was actually a 1-2 combination and not just a jab by Max Holloway, and clips Aldo. And does it again for the knockdown. Aldo does his best on the ground to survive. It goes well for a solid minute, but not enough to defend himself and get up. Winner by TKO, Max Holloway. UFC 217, Bisping lost to GSP. You could count this entry as extremely unlucky or lucky for the curse, because there just happened to be 3 title fights in this one card. Paulo Costa fought in this specific card, and all 3 reigning champions lost their bout that night. We don't have turkeys in this sport, but Paulo Costa found a way to get one. And to make it worse, all 3 challengers got a crazy finish and got the Performance of the Night award for it. All 3 of them. So no robberies here, just straight up destroyed the current champions. To start with, Paulo fought against Johnny Hendricks during 217 and it was a good fight. He has back-to-back southpaw opponents, so it does wonders for Costa. He can spam his rear body or high roundhouse kicks like crazy, especially in open stance against southpaws, and he nails it very well. Hendricks just couldn't establish a game plan to win the fight. He is always sucked into Costa's range and pressure, so he can't do much. Also, with being the smaller and older fighter, the best he could do was outstrike him in combinations with sudden leg kicks. It wasn't enough to make Costa think twice about his own game plan, and he just finished it in round 2. Coming into the GSP versus Bisping fight, GSP was actually the slight favorite. The fight begins and you can just notice the bulk on GSP to middleweight. They play it slow for a minute and George rushed in with a clean hook. No pun intended, but it also didn't do much to Bisping than just get intimidated by the speed. GSP gets more exchanges in, just being the faster fighter. He doesn't implement crazy knockout power yet and just wants to chip down down Bisping. He also does it with some takedown and grappling skills in the last moments of the round. Just seeing a shorter, bulked up fighter for the weight class, blitzing into his strikes and doing outstanding wrestling gives me Volk vibes. Round 2 was better for Bisping, where he got a read on GSP, knowing he will never be as fast as him. He timed the perfect window where GSP wanted to do a lead, a low kick, and got him good with a 1-2. Round 3 begins, and this is where the finish is. GSP goes for the takedown and it was successful, but Bisping had some strong elbows from full guard that cut him open. Bisping later gets up and actually got some momentum going. If he can clip GSP one more time, just like with round 2, that might be game and he defends the bout. But in the middle of Bisping's punching combination, GSP had his own and hooked him really good. So good he got the knockdown and then submitted him. It was over that quick. UFC 217, Cody loss. Cody walked into this fight against TJ with a moderate betting favorite. I can't blame them though. He is the champion and undefeated. They probably have the beefiest beef out of all the fighters in this video, so I'll keep away from that and just talk about the fight. The first half of the first round was kinda boring. These are both strikers and TJ has a unique style. He loves to do striking combinations, especially level changing them up. Who can forget his iconic duck fake to a high kick move? So with that being said, these two are just finding their range and most of the strikes are easily stuffed. Cody timed a low kick coming just like Bisping and rushed him with punches. None of them did anything significant, but it woke up the crowd. Round 2 starts and just halfway through, TJ finally found his range. TJ is in southpaw and circles out. Cody wants to counter straight away with the rear hand. TJ does the same, but TJ drops him first. It's funny looking back because they were both doing the exact same boxing combination to each other. And TJ finishes it with ground strikes and becomes the new Bantamweight champion. What a crazy way to lose your bout in a Paulo Costa card. What a way to just lose your undefeated status too. UFC 217, Joanna lost to Rose. Did I say losing your undefeated status earlier? Well, get ready for this fight against Rose Namajunas and Joanna. Joanna defended her bout 5 times and is undefeated. That is looking mad GOAT status already. But for some strange cursed reason, this was the night it all came falling apart. This video is making Paulo Costa a lot more scary now. Fight begins and Joanna comes in as a giant favorite. They play around with some weapons until Rose got comfortable with a 1-2. She knows that's money and got some good shots with it. Not 3 minutes into the fight and Rose drops Joanna. They get up after a minute so Joanna can recover and Rose just does it again. She lunges in with a right hook and TKOs her. She made it look easy, as if she was fighting an amateur and not a 4-time reigning undefeated champion. This is a fun fact from the wiki. Like UFC 33, UFC 205 and UFC 214, the card featured 3 title fights. However, this was the first time in UFC history that all 3 champions lost their bout on the same card. For more trivia, UFC 33 had 3 title fights. The fight between Dave and Castillo was for the vacant middleweight bout, so it was no crazy upset that card then. UFC 205 had Conor winning his new bout against Alvarez, but the other 2 were different. That same night, the Tyron Woodley and Thompson fight was a draw and Joanna defended her bout. UFC 214 had DC versus John Jones, where that no contest happened. And Woodley defended his bout against Maya, and finally the Chris Cyborg fight where she won for the women's featherweight division. UFC 226, Stipe lost to DC. Costa vs Uriah Hall was actually a great rewatch. It made me forget it was an MMA fight, because 99% of the strikes were all boxing combinations. Is there a reason why? Of course not. It's just an unwritten agreement to enjoy beating the shit out of each other. And my god did we enjoy it. The first round was exciting. They both have amazing jabs. Like the whole round was mostly jabs. Uriah has more experience and has the slightly better jab, so he has that going. Costa has more weapons in his arsenal alongside a good jab too. So after he gets a good jab in, he pressures Hall with some crazy shit. But that's where Hall's experience comes in and he can be defensive, nullifying most of it. Pretty good round 1. But in round 2, Costa just didn't care anymore. He just kept boxing and ignored the jab and got Uriah down. TKO win. We now turn over to the main event of Stipe versus Daniel Cormier. To think Stipe would lose at his own game too. DC didn't even need to do any wrestling to win. Just 4 minutes into the first round, DC managed to get comfortable in the clinch and do the most beautiful close-ranged hook ever. This knocked down Stipe and only a couple of ground strikes to really solidify it was a knockout. This just adds more to the curse because Stipe was on a crazy heavyweight run. Stipe was on his 3rd title defense and this was actually a UFC heavyweight record, and then suddenly just got clipped clean round 1 just like that. Goodbye bout. UFC 241, DC lost to Stipe. Costa versus Yoel Romero. This video is getting kinda long, but it's fine, because this fight did technically go to decision, but everyone remembers only the first round. This was Costa's first challenge in the top 5 middleweight division, and it's against the absolute animal Romero. Into the first round, Paulo Costa got his range straight after beating 2 solid southpaws already. He dropped Romero with a left hook, but Romero returned straight after with his own hook. And then they went to the ground. I really shouldn't enjoy 2 half-naked muscular men grabbing each other this much. The rest of the fight was okay, but nothing too interesting, and I want to keep this video under 15 minutes. Unanimous decision win for Costa. And extremely conveniently, Stipe has a rematch with DC on the same card of Costa again. The fight begins and Stipe is acting more smart now, taking advantage of his height. Nothing too significant happens that dictates the fight, but DC looks like he's winning the rounds. I know to never take scorecards from judges to heart, but they all picked DC as the winner if it did end up going to decision. Into the 4th round, Stipe had more energy and boxing skills to capitalize on the situation. A tired, stocky DC can't defend punches coming from everywhere, so the moment Stipe finally rocked DC's body real good, he knew to mix it up fast, going for the head and finishing it via TKO. And new, once again keeping the curse real. UFC 278, Usman lost to Leon. Paulo Costa versus Luke Rockhold. This fight between Paulo Costa and Luke Rockhold was a bit unnecessary, but was great regardless. It was his retirement fight, and even though he displayed everything a true fighter has, he knew that wasn't enough to keep going. He's old, and just re-watching the fight, you can tell too. He's fatigued and his cardio just isn't in the level of the top contenders. The only things that worked for him was moves that he trained down to the bone. It's not just muscle memory, it's like his subconscious made those moves. Like the 360 kick and the punch that rocked Costa for a bit. But yeah, other than that, it was a typical top current middleweight just shutting down an old guy. Leon Edwards beating Usman is a big one. This isn't really nostalgic, so I don't need to go into super detail on how the fight went, but explained very simply, Usman was the better fighter. The first round, Leon won because he was the only person to take Usman down and actually controlled him, but from rounds 2, 3, 4 and most of 5, Usman was just dominating. He had better cardio and boxing to just outdo whatever play Leon wanted. Not to mention this is their second bout as well. And since then, I gotta say Usman had more competition and fights, so you could say he improved even more. But in the final minute of the fight, he got leg kicked to the head and flash KO'd. Undefeated in the UFC, and also one lousy loss in his second career fight, so that doesn't count. He defended his bout 5 times and was the #1 pound for pound fighter. And everything fell apart. The actual next upcoming fight with Paulo Costa is him versus Sean Strickland. The title fight in that card is Islam versus Dustin. Islam losing his bout is less of an upset than Usman, so it's not totally crazy if Islam loses. Arguably. Islam has defended the bout already, He has only one loss in his career and is the pound for pound #1 fighter currently. It's not so crazy for this sport of MMA to totally crush all of this by a Dustin Poirier KO. I'm not predicting the fight at all, I'm just saying if the curse is actually true, then this might actually happen. And on the contrary, Dustin Poirier is 35 years old in the lightweight division. So in my next video, I'm doing a cursed video on the lightweights and under where they are 35 and older, where they just never win the title shot. So it's a 100% chance of the Paulo Costa curse that Dustin Poirier wins, or the 100% chance of Dustin Poirier losing because he's 35 and older. UFC 298, Volk lost to Ilya. Paulo Costa versus Robert Whittaker. This was a banger fight and I was sad to watch this knowing I don't want either of them to lose. Paulo Costa got the best in round 1 where his lead and rear kicks were super effective against Robert. It shut down Robert's karate blitz style and he didn't know how to work around it for a bit. At the end of round 1, Costa did the perfect spinning heel kick that even a video game can't replicate. Robert actually pulled back from the pocket so that the heel touched his face, sustaining even more damage instead. It left a mark on his cheek and made him lose a tooth, I think. Weirdly, this fight only made Whittaker show a strong chin and made a turnaround, winning rounds 2 and 3. Costa didn't really have that much cardio and didn't have the strength to keep high kicking to shut down every blitz combination Whittaker had. So it ended with a unanimous decision win for the Reaper. Yeah, so not gonna lie, this is my 4th time in this channel talking about this fight. So some of you are really sick of it already, so I'll just end the video here and you can look at all the Topuria fights video I made. You can navigate to the part where I talk about Volk losing his belt the saddest way possible. Make sure to like and subscribe with that depressing note.